Klatch coffee. Welcome to our roastery. I'm often asked, how did you start in the coffee business? Many years ago, I owned another business in another life. It was a construction company and did very well. And actually sold the business at 30 years old and had what I thought was a pile of money in the bank. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, well, you know, I kind of regretted I dropped out of college when I was 18. You know, lived at the beach, going to college, thought I'd take a semester off. Of course, I took the semester off and never went back. So since I had a non-compete, couldn't get back into construction, it was actually ironworks, I decided I'll go to school to get my degree. So I'm going to school and I studied chemical engineering. Chose engineering because it was, you know, similar to construction. I could look in the newspaper and find a job for engineers. And chemical was the most challenging. So halfway through getting my degree, what I thought was a pile of money was almost gone. It was disappearing. And kind of, what am I going to do? And at the time, and still now, married, had kind of 2 young kids. And for my wife and I, kind of our date night, our fun time, we would really go out to bars. We would go to these coffee houses that were just starting to pop up. There were no Starbucks anywhere around, and we're in Southern California. But there were some independent coffee houses coming up. So we'd go out and get coffee and dessert, and we thought, this is really fun, we really like it. So we decided to open a coffee house before we ran out of money. So we did, and it was really great. My wife could work days, and I could work nights, and work around my school schedule. Kept going, actually graduated from UC Riverside, and got my degree in biochemical engineering. Had job offers, looked around at different things, but found during that couple of years when we had the coffee house I was going to school that I really loved the coffee business. So I thought, you know, I just love to stay in coffee, so kind of like taking that semester off school and never going back, I kind of took a little time away from the engineering to get into coffee, and of course I've been in coffee ever since. So had the stores I mentioned for a couple of years, and I was at the time kind of wondering, what are we going to do? We thought, well, let's open a second store. So we did, and then a friend calls me up, and he had just bought a coffee house in Yorba Linda, a little town here in Southern California, and he says, calls me and says, hey Mike, he said, I bought this place, and it's got this coffee roaster in it, this machine. You know anything about roasting? And if you have any friends or engineers, of course, we think we can do anything. So I said, oh, sure, I can do that. You know, it's got a manual, right? So I went over, looked at it, figured it out, read about it, and made a deal with him where I got to use his machine to roast my own coffee for free. In exchange, I had to roast all his coffee for him for free. So he got free labor, I got free use of the machine. And when we started out, there were no schools, there was nowhere to learn, you couldn't really do much. He had a Dietrich machine. I read about it. I actually flew back the next week at Dietrich. It was really nice and helpful, and said he'd teach me how to use it. But in reality at the time, the education they could give you was really not much more than showing somebody how to use an oven. It hardly makes you a chef. So what I did is I applied what I learned in engineering, and I would document and plot every single roast and then taste it. So I had time, and temperature, and airflow, and flame, and I had these profiles and pictures, and I would do it all by hand. And I actually took the machine, and it had a temperature probe. And back then, when I used to build the roasters, the temperature probe was always kind of in the back, where it was an air temperature, kind of like an oven temperature. So I moved the probe to the front, to the surface of the bean. And it's kind of how ours is now. I'll show you when we get over there. It didn't come that way. So anyway, we did that, and then we can actually get a bean temperature, and I can watch the bean develop, so more like a meat thermometer versus an oven temperature. And then I can control everything and taste everything, and that's what we did. Based on taste, we make changes. So I kind of learned in the beginning with him and I. And as I experienced that, I thought, I got to get my own roaster. So I started looking around. I found one that a guy had for sale. 24 kilo Dietrich, and I didn't want one to put in the shop, and I wanted a little 10 or 12 kilo, but he had that, and I remember seeing it and thinking, oh my gosh, this is way too big, and I really, way more expensive than I would have ever guessed or could have assumed to afford. So I told him, gosh, thanks so much, I'm going to pass, because I just can't afford it. He says, well, how much are we going to spend? I said, well, I don't even want to tell you, because I'm kind of embarrassed. So, you know, let me know. And so I told him, and he said, sold. So I got this machine with all the everything, and the bells and whistles, and exhaust, and everything, for $5,000. Really kind of a steal. So we put it in our shop over in Sandy, which was our second shop at the time. Started roasting in there, just for ourselves. Little by little, people began to ask us for stuff. Can I sell to them? And it expanded and started to do wholesale business. And it finally grew where we were doing too much coffee in there. We ended up having to move here. This warehouse is now full of jams, and we're actually going to look to expand and have to get some more area, a bigger machine, because we're working 2 shifts a day, 7 days a week, just to keep up with the orders, which is fantastic and great. But going back to kind of how we started roasting, when we started doing it, we first learned on how to make the beans that we could buy the best quality we could. But then as we kind of advanced a little more, we kind of thought, well, how can we get better beans? So we started dealing with lots of different importers, trying to find out about beans, and finally decided, you know, I want to meet these farmers. I want to see where this coffee's coming from. I want to learn more about the coffee. So that's when I started making trips to origin, going there and learning and finding and seeing what the differences are. And while many people still deal with importers, by going direct, I get access to so much more things, so many more information, and I get access to beans that are often sold before they ever get here, so we can actually get better coffee. My first trip, I'll never forget, it was in Nicaragua, and at the time, they kind of had this thing like Sandinistas and Contras, and kind of this kind of wild times going on, and the farmer invited me down. I went with 2 friends who were roasters, so 3 of us went down there, and going there, before we went, my wife said, I don't think it's so safe, because it's in the news all the time, all this violence and stuff going on, and you should talk to him and make sure it's okay. So I called the farmer on the phone, and at the time we didn't have Skype, and we're talking, and he said, oh, no problem, I carry a gun. And that was my introduction to traveling to Oregon. Once there, it was so fun because we went to his farm, and I remember walking these hills, I'm falling down, I can barely go up them. There's trees all over, and these ladies are picking the cherries and climbing up and down. They got a baby on their back sometimes, a big basket of coffee. I'm falling down just walking, and it's amazing me how wonderful they were doing. And the farmer, previous years, so often the farmers would try to separate the beans by size. Thinking the bigger beans were better, and they could get a higher price for them. Where the smaller beans they would separate out. And this farmer, a little bit forward thinking, to realize he had different varieties of coffees, not just Arabica, but different varieties of Arabica coffees. So he thought, this year I'm going to separate picking by the different types of variety, and invited us to taste these different varieties. And as we're tasting, we roasted down there the samples, and we tasted them kind of live, and we did. One of them was just fantastic, and the other guys all thought the same thing, which is a great variety. And there was a Monica Turra. There was a Cross, Mario Yeti, and a Cultura. I had never heard that variety, but it was really fantastic and wonderful. But he didn't have a lot of it. It was the smallest amount. So the 3 of us played poker one night, with the winner getting a lot. And at Klatch Coffee, we were able to get that lot, so it was a lot of fun. And that was kind of my beginning travels. Today, I travel quite a bit. I'm probably gone 3 months out of the year. I visit most of the farmers I buy from. We look at, it's kind of our direct trade model. As part of our direct trade model, it's a little different than fair trade, although we carry many fair trade coffees, many organic coffees you can see here. But the direct trade model that we follow, where it's a little bit different than fair trade, is number 1, it's based on quality. We're looking for a great cup. So we only buy coffee that has an 85 or above cupping score, many times 88, 90-point coffees are all we're looking to buy. We're trying to find the best coffees we can. The Fairtrade don't quite have the same standard. So number one is quality coffee, not just any one specialty. Once we find great coffee, next thing we look at is what does the farmer do environmentally, socially, and economically. So to pick a farmer as an example, I met one farmer, Luis Ortiz, with Las Mercedes in El Salvador. I met her because she got first place in her country in the Cup of Excellence in 2006. And for those who don't know, Cup of Excellence was a wonderful program established to find the best coffee in the country, where farmers from all over the country submit their best lots. And they'll have hundreds and hundreds of farmers submit. In Brazil, it's on top of 600 different farmers submit lots. They'll try these different lots. They'll nationally whittle them down to the best coffees, tasting blind. And when they get the best ones, they invite international couplers from around the world to come in and be able to taste these coffees. And based on their taste, they score them. And it's all blind and over their tasting. And in the end, they have a winner. And she got first place on her coffee for it. So wonderful coffee. And of course, they follow these tastings with a month later an auction where they auction them online on the internet. So people around the world have a month to be able to get samples, taste them, and then be able to bid on these coffees. So I got to meet her through that. And then went down and visited her farm afterwards and made a relationship with her. And just first, it's a wonderful coffee. That's what we got. But secondly, environmentally. Now in her case, she's not an organic farmer, but she is rainforest line certified. She does so many things. To start with, while they have springs around here, they actually collect rainwater. They have it collect in these large tanks. They use the rainwater to run their wet mill. They're not a very big farm, they do have their own small mill. And the water that comes to the mill, they actually recycle it back. They use recycled water in the mill. And then once the water is too dirty to recycle and use back, it goes through a series of lagoons before it's clean enough to be able to allow back again into the streams. So wonderful environmentally, there's so many great things down there. Next, socially and economically. We actually have a program with them called Solo Logo, where we pay the pickers an extra 25 cents a pound bonus to only pick the beautiful red cherries just the way we want it. We found the better picking and selection you get, the better the cup in the end. And then finally, on the social side, we put together with the farmer a program where 25 cents of every pound goes to what we call a community fund. Put it in a bank account. At the end of the season, that money, we jointly together with the farmer decide where to spend that money. So the first year, for example, we actually supported the sports leagues. Because down there, kind of like here in the United States, they have a gang problem. So to try to get the youth away from the gangs, they try to get into sports. So together with one other friend, we bought all of her coffee together. We actually put the money together. We bought soccer balls, and basketballs, and uniforms and shoes for all the players in the league. Only 61 players, but it was kind of a big deal, a big thing for them. The farmer on their own actually really believe to give it back to the community. They actually got a medical center built just outside the ground of the farm, where anybody that can sit in the community can come. So it's not limited to their workers, it's to everybody in the community. And at this medical clinic, they have a doctor 3 days a week. A nurse comes 5 days a week every day, and they have free medical care and free prescriptions for everybody to come. It's approved through the government, and it's something their way of giving back to their community. So in subsequent years, we've got our money to support this medical clinic to be able to provide drugs, to be able to afford to build more clinics. The program's expanded now. Instead of just being in one little community, we have people from 10 different communities coming here now because the medical care is better than they can get from the other doctors in the government. And they've also expanded to schools. When the nurse will go out to the schools and see every child every year to measure how they do in height, weight, health-wise, to see if they need to go to see a doctor and need some medical care, to monitor their growth over time and their health. So they'll actually visit some of the houses. Those that have a problem, they'll actually help mitigate and be able to kill the fungus and the disease, to be able to give the people a better quality of life. So this is an example of what our direct trade dollars can do, and what you as our customers support. So that's kind of our direct trade model to be able to follow. You hear about multi-roaster coffee houses, and it's like the new wave and the hottest thing. But when I first started in the coffee business, I said we had the one coffee house. I would buy it from one coffee roaster, and then I'd start tasting coffee from others, and I'd find another roaster that did something else different, or had a different coffee the other person did. And before long I knew it, I was buying from 6 different coffee roasters, because each one did something a little bit different, a little bit better. And of course it was that search for excellence that led me to start roasting myself. And that's what kind of why I got into roasting. But it's funny, because back then, we were just trying to find the best coffee, yet today it's like something people discovered. We were doing it 20 years ago. Okay, so I'm here at our roaster with our production manager and roast master here, Shane. And this is our actually first machine that we got, the oversized one, and now we're running 16 hours a day, 7 days a week on to keep up. We've taken off the fancy gold front just for easy maintenance. You can see in here, close up, there's some green beans roasting in there right now. It's early on to a roast. If you look down in here and come up close, you can see the beautiful color of the batch we just finished here. We have this machine. As I mentioned, I kind of modified this machine. We can have a temperature probe on the surface of the bean. And that's what you see here. The actual hole was in the back. We relocated it here. We put the probe in here. So as the beans turn, we get it right on the probe so you can read the temperature as it comes out. So we come around this side over here, go right around Shane. You can see how the machine reads, but now we go through the back, and now we've gone a step further. What we used to do all by hand, now we actually have connected to a little laptop. You can see it's doing a profile right there of the batch he's doing. Now this doesn't control the roaster, that's done by Shane. What this does though is it monitors, so we can go back and we can see every single thing about this batch. We'll have a record of this, so our coffee all the way through. We go back and look and find out the batch. Now you're tasting, oh man, this coffee is so dang good, this is wonderful. What is it? We can look at it, go back and see the profile of what we did. Or if God forbid something happens and it's not good, we can look and find out and see the profile and see if something happened wrong. What? Of course, if a mistake happens, that's a donation plate. Nothing goes to waste. But as we get back to the roast here, you can kind of look now. What was that green? It's starting to turn just a slight bit of yellow. As we check back in, you'll see this begin to change color as we get near the end of the roast.
To kind of affect the quality control of the batch, I'm calculating to see how fast the coffee is rising with respect to the amount of heat I'm adding. So what that means is if I need to go about a minute or 60 seconds and then to go about 10 degrees, on average, treating it kind of like a linear quality, we'll need to go about 6 seconds per degree. So that's kind of how we calculate how fast we need to go, or what we need to do with respect to the end of the batch. Also, what I'm doing is I'm adjusting my airflow. That helps me drive the air and help keep the beans more consistently. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it, and hopefully when it comes out, come down, keep it just right. You might hear maybe a slight cracking. This is a decaf coffee. They don't always necessarily do that. But the point is to come over here and check the coloration of the coffee. If you have a nice, beautiful, golden brown, consistent color like this, especially for a decaf, then you know that you've done something right with the batch. Just taking a look here, not a lot of varied colors. It's not variegated in any way. It's just a nice, consistent, beautiful caramel golden brown, and that's kind of what you want for the new batch. But that's just kind of what we do here. We just calculate the rate, we just put the right amount of heat in, and we try to make as little changes to the batch as necessary to produce a good quality cup of coffee. About the batch we just did, it was a decaf Columbia. What's important to note is although we have a different variety of coffees, pretty much every coffee roasts very consistently, pretty much the same. As you notice here, there's always different parts of the batch. The first part of the batch is called the absorption period, so that's what I call it. It's where it absorbs and takes in all the heat. That's why you can see right here on our temperature reader, it continues to drop and drop and drop until it reaches a certain point where it's still considered what they call in the science field an endothermic process, where it just keeps taking in the heat, but it will continue to rise. So as you see right here, it stalls out and it goes up and up and up. That part of the batch is very, very important because we need to figure out how much heat we throw into it, as we showed earlier, and we need to calculate it, kind of like the math we also talked about. But you get up to this point right here, where we start adding our airflow, we start controlling the batch with air, and you can see it start to level out. This period in between the cracks is very important as well, because that will denote how much the coffee rises as the gases escape the bean. As you can see here, coffee starts to slow down, still continues to absorb heat in the batch, at which point it doesn't quite stall, but it's reaching that second part of the batch, which is called the exothermic part of the reaction, where it will continue to rise on its own. At that point we add less heat, so that way we're not burning the beans, and we'll still have a consistent batch. So you have the first part of your batch where it's absorbing the heat, the second part where it continues to rise with respect to the flame in the air, and then the last part of the batch, which is called in between the crack. Very important to have all three of them consistent. As you can see, this is a really good profile. There's not a lot of jagged edges. It's nice and smooth, and we are slowly bringing the heat down towards the end and finishing the batch.
Everything that comes in, we do that right here on this little sample roaster. Little 2-barrel. This thing cost me more than double what my big machine did. Bought it new, it's never grown. So I've got 100 grams here. I weighed out. This happens to be a lot from Brazil. It's a hollow region. So I've got it in here. I'm going to put it in here now. I've already warmed this up to where I want it. This is simply how I put it in. Start my clock. I'll record in my book what I've got going. And I'll be able to check the beans with this to see how they're doing. I've got a temperature gauge up here so I can see the temperature on this. Now this different than my other one is not a bean one. It's more of a temperature within the drum. So I'm really watching the beans develop. As we check back in, we'll see what happens there. We can take a quick look in there and see what's going on. You can see the color. The beans are starting to change quite a bit darker now. You see the light tan on them? Listen. You hear that? That's the cracking sound there. Looking at the bean, I'm looking at the color, I'm looking at the size, the shape. That's done. Drop that in there, spread it out. See how nice and even and pretty those look?